Okay, well, here we are, the Town of Richmond Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. We have a quorum of our members, Chelsea Brooks, Mark Valsel, and myself. I did speak with Allison and she said she'd try to come, but she wasn't sure. She's just been moving back to her house. So anyway, we can start. We have our quorum of 3. We have one guest, Trevor Brooks. Thank you for coming, and Keith. All right, so we will look at the agenda and see if the agenda is what we want, and if there's any public comment on non-agenda items by anybody. All right. Hearing no problems with the agenda, we'll continue with the posted agenda. Next on the agenda is to review the minutes of our July 1st, 2026 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions, changes to these minutes?
No.
Okay, hearing none, we will accept those minutes into the record as written. Okay, and now we're going to move to our substantive agenda item, which is to continue with our discussion of the proposed stormwater regulations that we are working on to try to get it right. And I will just...
Was that me?
That must be you. Okay, so I'm going to go over this memo that I admit I only recently posted. I did send it to the commissioners. Personally, I got a little delayed, but I wanted to kind of go over where we are and the nature of the items that are in the meeting materials. So there's a number of materials that are marked current. All the meeting materials that are marked current are related to the stormwater proposals from Chelsea and Trevor Brooks. These documents labeled current are going to be one of the 3 alternative proposals that we have going, and that we're going to consider at this meeting. That's why the item says Brooks proposal and alternatives. So the other 2 proposals in that group of 3 are what I'm calling the original proposal, which was where we started with the major and minor site plan as a way to distinguish when a professionally designed plan is needed. And alternative 2 is I've been working on recently because I've been thinking about the complexity of the other 2 proposals and the learning curve associated, and wanting to get back to using our actual documents that we have in our regulations and just make some relatively minor adjustments to them so that we can have in our regulations the ability to start to regulate stormwater. It's new that we're going to have these in the regulations, so I wanted it to be just on the way to getting there, not too hard to understand, not too many changes for people to make. So that's where alternative 2 is coming from. And I will briefly go over so that we can talk about them in comparison, talk about alternative 2 in comparison to current and original. I know you haven't had much time to look at those. So I'm just going to talk briefly about them. And then we can think about how to compare the proposals. And I listed some issues to consider. How easy is this going to be for owner and applicants, for developers to adjust to from what we have? We don't want to suppress development, especially housing development. we've got to consider that. How easy is it going to be for the planning and zoning staff to assist, administrate, enforce? What's the balance that we need between specificity and flexibility? You know, we have a zoning officer and a DRB whose job it is to know about these things and to be able to assist to particular circumstances. It's very hard to make a rule that fits everybody. And is the scale of the regulations in line with the scale of the rest of our regulations, which is, you know, they're older, they're a little muddled. I don't know how much beyond that we want to make our new regulations, and what's the learning curve like for all these different proposals for everybody. So just a few highlights, or the highlights from this alternative 2. And we can look at the whole documents maybe at some point. Basically, alternative 2 takes our existing zoning regulations and our subdivision regulations, and it adds some language that requires erosion control and stormwater management. The zoning document is section 5, which Keith has up on the screen, and it is the permitting section. So what we want is something in the permitting section that requires people to have an erosion plan, to have a stormwater plan. So the only place that language has been changed is the requirements for any zoning permit. So that's everybody who gets a zoning permit. And the changes you will see in red.
Are they here?
Application requirements. Yep, section 5.2.3 D. And a few little minor words that are just, you know, not significant. But under this zoning permit application requirements, we have section D, which introduces a requirement that you have a stormwater management and erosion control plan. So we've left the language in from the original proposal, 600 square feet of disturbed land, 600 square feet of impervious surface, or slopes of 15%. And the reason for the 600 is because it mirrors the certificate of occupancy.
Yep.
Hi, Allison.
Hey, Allison.
Welcome. Here's a seat for you right here.
Thank you, thank you.
Come and sit down. We have a sign for you somewhere.
Oh, I got a strip on it. I will try not to set it on tonight.
Yeah, we're just talking about the latest alternative plan for having stormwater that
Oh, good.
I've worked and Keith has looked at. So basically, it says you have to have in the plan for your application, it doesn't say where it has to be, it just says in your application, you have to describe or portray erosion prevention and sediment control techniques proposed for the project as described in section 6.16 and the Vermont Low Risk Site Handbook. Section 6.16 has become just guidance and education.
Oh,
No requirements in it. It's what?
Well, the,
6.17? What did I say?
1/6.
Oh, 6.17. And you also have to have a description or portrayal of the post-construction stormwater management techniques proposed for the project as described in 6.17 and the Vermont Low Impact Development. So that is the basic, and I think it really corresponds to the Brook's proposal of saying everybody has to have some kind of basic information like this.
yeah.
Anyway, so that's in the section of the zoning permit application requirements. The next section that is changed is certificate of occupancy, and it adds a requirement that's 5.3.53C, that the proposed stormwater management features are in place at the time of the certificate of occupancy.
That's a good idea.
Under site plan review, 3.5.3,
3.5, hang on a second.
5.5.3, sorry, 5.5.3. If you are required to have a site plan, then you will have to, under the conditions of approval, there is a number F that talks about stormwater management and erosion control in your site plan.
Mhm.
And it says the DRB may consider these things, which are like the things in the matrix, but it's giving the DRB the responsibility of knowing something about this subject and of making decisions based on the guidelines. I would like them to be doing their job there. Conditional use review, obviously, that's, you will need a site plan for that. That's already required. And 5.6, stormwater management features for the completed project are, as described in 6.17, shall be provided. So this is just dealing with all the permitting section, basically after the original zoning permit.
Mhm.
It talks about the special cases, all of which require a site plan and a professionally designed plan. So
Mhm.
basically in each one of these sections, it just mentions the fact that this is what you need. So it's a very small number of changes that we're actually making. The one section of the permitting part of the zoning regulations that is not covered is the subdivision.
Right.
And we should actually have subdivision as part of our zoning regulations, but we haven't done that. That's what most land use regulations, they include the subdivision, just like a site plan or conditional use. Subdivision is a different one.
Excuse
So
me,
for that,
why have we not had that so far, do you think?
well, in 2012, the zoning that failed tried to combine the subdivision regs into
Yeah.
the zoning regulation.
Oh, I
It
see.
was part of the whole package that was too much for everybody.
Yeah,
all at
I
once.
see. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
I'd
at some
forgotten about
point,
that.
we
Yeah.
should do that. Just have land use regulations. So anyway, so in order to capture people who are subdividing, we have to alter the subdivision regulations. There's also only a small number of changes that we need to make to the subdivision regulations. In section 310, we require an erosion prevention, sediment control, and stormwater management plan prepared by a professional.
Mhm.
Because this is one of those permits that is a DRB review is required, so a professional plan is required. We have added in 320 that you also have to show the extent of the land to be disturbed as well as those other things. And then the main place that we have changed is section 6.50, which was called drainage and fill. But I changed that to erosion control and stormwater management. And that is pretty much where the meat of what you need to have for your stormwater and erosion plan if you're subdividing.
Mhm.
Many of the, the categories were already kind of laid out.
Mhm.
Design of the system, accommodation of the flows, downstream drainage, if it's enough to convey the water. And I did change it to a 10-year storm. Keith and I talked about this, and
What was it before?
25 years. So we can talk about that, and we can talk about the exact numbers. 10-year storm is more like a couple of inches instead of
Yeah.
4.5 inches. And then erosion control during construction. These were all categories that were already in the subdivision regulations. And it just emphasizes them and makes them more specific. So added requirement to file the management system as legal data and to require continuing maintenance. So those are pretty much all the things that relate to stormwater
Mhm.
in the subdivision section. I added those things to the revision of the subdivision section that I had done for the master development plan discussion that we had a couple of years back,
Yeah.
where we removed master development plan from the zoning regulations. We did not remove it from the subdivision regulations. This is a good time to do that and to insert critical permit conditions instead. So that is in there as well, that when you get more time to look at these, you will see that there's a few additions that relate to that. They don't specifically relate to the stormwater, but this is the time we're working on the subdivision regs that we should, if we're doing it this way, that we should add those condition. So those two documents, the zoning regs, the subdivision regs, minor changes that add these requirements. Section 6.17 is for guidance only. There are no actually requirements in there, but we will try to work on our zoning officials whose job it is to deal with this,
Yeah.
to understand what 6.17 is saying. And of course, applicants who are making their own plan, who don't need a site plan, who don't have DRB review required, can go to 6.17 and see what an adequate plan looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's the nature of alternative number 2. It sort of goes the other direction from making it more specific and complex to trying to make it more simple and have a shorter learning curve and go back to just giving basic permission to the staff to have some regulations. So that is the brief introduction to alternative 2. And Chelsea, do you want to talk about what you all changed from your initial proposal to the documents that are now called current? Did you have changes to those documents or?
Yeah, there are changes. I don't have, sort of similar to your style, I don't have them sort of specifically marked out. Essentially, it was cleaned up to be simpler, and easier to administer. I think you can see it just from the length of the document is shorter. I don't know,
You want me to share for you, Chelsea?
me to share my screen? No, I'm
Okay.
I'm not in the Zoom meeting on my laptop.
But he could share it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to think about how I would point out changes. I'd have to bring up both.
To give a
documents.
suggestion, I mean, again, I mean, this is extensive, but that policy memo is, I think, a really good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, we can bring that up and
Yeah.
look through that. So these are things that the policy memo is intended to be like, here's the draft of the regs. Here's the things that we actually need to make decisions on before we move forward with like actually drafting like the final revision of these zoning regs. And the things here like posed as like things that are considerations.
So we're not seeing a screen share, are you?
Yeah,
Okay, we're not.
Huh.
Uh,
Oh, maybe because did you click the button to give up control, like thinking I was gonna share?
let me back out of this. That should stay. That can go.
Do you have this, Aaron, the screen right now? Oh,
I just see you guys. Oh, I
okay.
see that I'm talking, but there's
Oops,
no, I don't see whatever it is you're sharing.
Okay.
that's not good.
I want to see it.
Oh, I'm sure you do. No, it doesn't matter.
That's
That shouldn't matter. Oh, wait, what's that? No, I don't want that.
All
Who can
participants.
share when someone's sharing? I'm not sure what's going on here.
no.
Well, let me try this. Maintain current size, interval screen. It's kind of all, that's not anything that I gotta worry about. Shoot out of there. It's gotta be somewhere in here.
Oh, something's happening. Okay,
How's it-
see the related files list, the agenda, etc.
Okay, good. You're
Great.
seeing that.
Thank you.
I just screwed it up.
No, I think probably should still be able to see it because you're.
Yeah, when I go like this, so
Yeah, yeah.
that,
Oh, okay.
there you go. Let's go to here. And we're back.
Can you see that, Aaron?
Yep, current July
Yep.
7th, etc.
Perfect.
Yep.
Fantastic. Back to you, Chelsea.
Cool. So, I guess what I was saying, or I think what I was saying was that the things sort of posed as questions in this, memo of decisions or sort of things to discuss would, in my opinion, are things that would be relevant to discuss regardless of how we approach this, these zoning regs. And so I don't know if it would be beneficial to go through them and sort of chat through, like, what do we think about all these things? I think the answers to some of these questions also will inform sort of how you want to go with this, because sort of level of complexity or what's included, what our ultimate goals are, and what we're trying to accomplish is going to sort of have a lot of bearing on how the regs look and how they're drafted. So I don't want to like read this to you because I assume everybody.
Sure. Well, I mean, we could go.
I'm not
through
like sort of
questions.
a read the screen type of person, but I guess the first question is like
Read it. That's
should all
fine.
zoning permitted land disturbance follow basic EPSC standards? And this is sort of in line with what the zoning office says they have currently been doing for the last near to 2 years, that requiring projects to comply with the state's low risk handbook.
And if I could just interrupt 1 second. So what one of the goals that I would have is to take things that are internal policies and put them in the regulations, because if this has been internal policies and people don't know about it, then that's not fair. So if it's internal regs, let's get it out there. It's good that they've been doing it, and this is what we need to have in the regulations. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so currently the draft that is proposed is like the one that's marked current in the meeting materials is saying that everything has to meet this low risk handbook, unless other thresholds are met, right? And so this would apply even if those thresholds on the risk evaluation tool aren't met. If you don't need a professional plan, all these things, it's just sort of this baseline.
So if you're going to have a shed that's 10 by 10, this is going to apply, right?
So EPSC is like if you're disturbing soil, right? So like if you're bringing in a shed that's like you're building it, I mean, I don't think I know of any sheds that are on like a poured concrete slab. And even if they are, like you're
not disturbing.
I don't think it would. Yeah. So I don't know as if it's in the current draft proposal, but like at the state level, digging out a foundation doesn't count as like something that's subject to stormwater regs because it's self-contained, right? If you're digging a hole and the water is going to potentially fill the hole and not spill out of the hole, then they don't count that as something that needs
So we would have to say what land disturbance meant, because in your example of the shed being brought in and just put on a concrete pad, that wouldn't be permitted land disturbance, presumably, right?
Yeah, so I think this is literally just saying like any open permit, like if you disturb land, you would do something to control the potential for sediment runoff is the current approach. But as you can see, so if you scroll down this policy choice thing, this is like sort of the posed question, right? To to the commission of, does every project, including land disturbance, meet this? Like, do we need to have everybody meet the low risk handbook? Do we want everybody to meet the low risk handbook? It would, as I said, I guess I used even the word that was in this without reading it. It would create this baseline, excuse me, of everybody just follows that. And it eliminates the additional administrative review of like, are you following it? Because just everybody has to follow it. It's just this baseline expectation.
Okay, so this would differ from, for instance, alternative 2 or the original, in that they had a 600 square feet land disturbance minimum as the cutoff.
Uh-huh.
If you were below that, you didn't need to do anything, and if you were above, so this is saying there's no 600 feet, it's just starting from 0 or 1 square foot of land disturbance, right?
If it's a project that requires a zoning permit, yeah.
If it requires a zoning permit, okay. Yep,
And so
How
that's sort
does
of a,
that compare with some of the nearby communities? Is this really different from some of the other towns around, or is it more stringent or less stringent? What do you think?
this piece of it, so I mean, nearby towns are all different. So I would say that, yeah, they're all different. Trevor's got his hand
Yeah,
raised.
there's no straight line standard curve
Yeah.
from town to town,
Yeah.
some are higher, some
Yeah.
are lower,
Yeah.
and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
Oh, and I'm not advocating that there should be, but
just
Uh,
wondering if there
somebody
was-
over here has
Yeah.
something to say.
Trevor.
So I wrote this, so I just wanted to like, when I put this in, I just want like, this is what the rule is supposedly right now. It's like every project is supposed to follow our handbook. Should they? Like, I think that seems like
Right,
catches a lot of things that maybe don't even need to be looked at, but
Right.
that's what it is right now, so I just left that, I didn't change anything, make it less restrictive than what is happening now, but
Mhm.
I don't even know if that's really appropriate at that level, but there are, I think, possibly Milton just says you just have to follow the rules handbook.
Yeah,
Like, I think for all projects, but they're, because of their in the impaired waterway, they have far stricter rules than the private state. Wants them to have them be good. I just, a lot of these are like, so just a lot of stuff I wrote was like, I couldn't tell in the meeting what the goal was gonna be, like, do you want everyone to do the EPST plan, just in general, like, I didn't know what, like, how much rain do you wanna account for, 25-year storm?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's
Right.
hard to write the rules, but I don't know
yeah.
where you're going with this, like every meeting is
Yeah.
like, let's modify this and then come back and change it again, but I'm like, I don't know where we're going with this. So I tried to just cover the stuff you've talked about, throw out the stuff you don't like. Change the things that you think should be changed to something else,
Yeah.
and then you hopefully like, with knowing what some goal
Yeah.
is, yeah, to try to like save this, like, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of modifications, but not a lot of,
Yeah.
like, where are we going with this?
I definitely didn't take it as a finished product.
Yeah, I just
for
wanna make sure,
sure.
well, it's not
It's a
like, it's not
holistic
even like what I would say, oh, this is
Yeah.
what I would really
Yeah.
support, I just try to make it open-ended, pick some numbers. And I changed some numbers just to be different, to say, this is why you might wanna consider something different, just think about, not even that I think
Yeah.
that's the best
Right.
one, like, that's why I lowered the total impervious to 400. Just to, like, think about, like, what does that mean, why would you want to do that, like,
Yeah.
if you don't have to do phasing rules, this is off topic, but like, phasing rules can be complicated.
Yeah.
So like, not having to do phasing rules might be easier for the zoning office to not have to like retroactively, like, well, you did this before and you didn't get a permit, now you're doing this other thing, you have to go back and do management on this other thing that you've already done. It
That's a
just
good
seems
point.
complicated.
That's a good point. I mean, a lot of, you do want to have that flexibility for the ZA because each project stands on its own.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, if it's a 600 square foot or 400 square foot trigger, 200 square feet of disturbance may require a silt fence, and that's usually the bare minimum that we use is a silt fence on that. We require for all land disturbance, and if it's minor, then it's like, make sure you grass and seed it or do whatever you need to do. It's really project dependent on what it is. But definitely it's giving me some food here. It's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? We're trying to, an E&S specifically, what we're trying to accomplish, obviously, is to keep the ground not exposed or to keep the ground exposed for the most limited amount of time. I mean, that's it, with that. And to apply a square footage to that may be a misnomer. I don't disagree. The 600 square foot, obviously, as you alluded to, is sutured to the need for a CO. a certificate of occupancy. So if we have a 550-foot project, we don't go out and issue a CO for it. You know, they'll tell us when it's complete. We'll make sure everything is fine after the stakeout and it's complete. And that's it. We don't require a CO to be issued. If it's less than 600, but during the permitting phase, we require that they have erosion and sediment control if they're disturbing the land. And that's what we want to get promulgated in here. And I don't think we're quite there with that thinking right now. to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
well, I mean, it seems like the policy choice is, do we want to have a minimum or not? You know, I mean, is the minimum all the land disturbance? Is that a good minimum? And then you're basically landing on the side of flexibility rather than specificity, because that's one of our questions. How specific do we want to be, or do we want to allow flexibility for our zoning staff to make a decision, which is what they're supposed to do? But anyway, so
Make a decision on what, I guess, what do you mean by that?
If you need
if
ENS or
what
not.
you need, if you need something or not.
Well, if there's a minimum, then if they meet that minimum acreage, or square footage of stuff, they would need one regardless, correct?
Correct.
So
If-
then there's no decision, it's just,
We're at 600,
If you want
it's
to,
at 400, and I don't disagree with
no,
any.
no, I know, that's a decision though that the planning commission is making. What do we want to write these bylaws as? I'm trying to understand what Virginia means as flexibility for the zoning office to make decisions.
if we say the minimum, if you say everyone who has a zoning permit involving land disturbance has to have some kind
Yeah.
of basic erosion prevention,
Mhm.
then that's your minimum. Some kind of basic, I mean, we haven't defined what basic erosion prevention and sediment control standard is, but everyone has to meet some kind of standard. And having a number like 400 square feet or 600 absolves people who are doing something smaller than that from meeting any standard. Maybe we don't want that, you know, maybe we don't want a number, but that was to help people who are building a little shed
Yeah.
not have to have, you know, an erosion prevention and sediment control.
So, I mean, we could have on the permit, and I'm just spitballing here, that all land disturbance may require basic erosion and sedimentation controls, because that is our current policy. May require, there are items that wouldn't. If you have a flat land and you're disturbing 150 square feet, I think you're fine. If you're in a bowl, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing things out at this point. So
So the point about flexibility is that that kind of statement is giving the zoning
Right.
officer and or the DRB the flexibility to determine what is needed.
I don't know.
which we
Yeah.
currently have.
To determine what is needed or
We-
if it's needed. I guess I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say that in the time I've been on the planning commission, aware of government operations, we've gone through a tremendous number of zoning administrators.
Yes.
And they have ranged from extremely flexible to extremely rigid
Mhm. And that
and
will-
persnickety and expensive, potentially. I think the idea that we want to accomplish here is to eliminate those variables, to give more specific guidance to the ZA as to what the thresholds are. Now, there may be exceptions and there could be things that, if the zoning administrator says, okay, you don't qualify technically, but this is a big issue. I'm going to, defer to the DRB or somebody, then I can see doing that, but we should have standards so that people know, if they're not particularly good friends with a zoning administrator and they come in, they're not going to be judged differently because of no definition in what's accepted. So it can give the perception of bias, even if there isn't any, because there is no standards other than the zoning administrator's personal preferences on that
You
day.
may or may not need this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So are you feeling like every land disturbing zoning permit should meet some basic erosion prevention and sediment control standard?
No. I don't, I think there should be,
You want a number,
floors to that. Now, what they are, I don't know.
Right.
You know, 10 by 10 shed, absolutely under that floor.
right?
20 by 30 garage, 600 feet,
With slopes of 15% over there, yeah.
you know, that's gotta be
Mhm, right,
monitored and regular. That's an awful lot of disturbance. So where's that fine line? I don't know.
right. But you're thinking there should be a size or set of sizes or whatever under which you don't need to worry about this.
Right.
You want to get to the, and I've been using this a lot recently, is you want to get to the quantification and not so much the qualification
Yes.
number, because
Right.
we can still, we want to be able to qualify also at times depending on what the parcel has as far as restraints.
And you know, a 600-foot deck, which of course is an exaggeration, I can't imagine, but someone's probably got one out there.
I used to have one big.
But a deck that big really is only disturbing, you know, yes, it's 600 square feet,
Right.
but you're not disturbing, you know, 20 square feet of land. It's all on posts. So there's got to be some sort of land disturbance rather than structure.
Mhm.
And
Right.
you build it a house and you put it on stilts.
I mean, I mean, that's a good point of what we deal with also when we're administering is each project is it's unique.
Yeah.
It really is.
Right.
That's actually one of the cool things about the job, to be honest.
Well, yeah. And there should be some leeway for interpretation by the ZA to say,
And I think
we need to bump this, or this
Yeah.
needs additional information. But on the other hand, there certainly should be floors.
Yeah, let me propose this, come up with a number, whatever it is, I will administer it, but we always have that clause, any other information that the zoning administrator requires.
Mhm.
That's what I'm running under right now in order to require ENS.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you give us a number of 400, 200, 500, whatever it is, it doesn't, and remove the suturing with the CO on it. I mean, I can go away with that. For me, that's for expediency purposes. But it works for us. And I would say that should reduce that number for a CO, whatever that number is, it should be brought up or down, the need for a CO based on square footage of land disturbance. And then anything under that, if we feel again, because it's subjective based on the land and what the restraints are, we can employ that any other information clause.
Right.
So,
And again, I harken back, which still isn't really well defined. But a percentage of the lot area. Doing a 20 by 20 land disturbance to put in a nice sized shed and digging out a foundation, leveling the dirt, moving some piles on a 100-acre lot is different than a 20 by 20 shed on an 1/8 acre lot.
Yeah, and I think the question is, do you have to be very specific about that, or is that something you would delegate to your zoning official?
Again, I get back to the interpretation of potential bias.
Mhm.
Why are you making me do this?
Right,
Jimmy didn't have to do that,
hear that all
you
the time.
know?
no,
And whereas, listen, you disturbed more than, I don't know, 200 square feet of land, you got to give some information. You're putting in a 10 by 10 shed. You can get away with that. You start going bigger than even 200, I think, of actual land disturbance, then yeah, you've got to have go through the song and dance of EPSC,
Yeah, how are you going to protect your neighbor?
right?
That's really what it comes down to with the infill development.
Right. And when you're dealing with, even 200 feet on an 1/8 of an acre is a pretty large percentage. If you're on an 1/8 of an acre, then you can assume your neighbor only has an 1/8 of an acre and
Mm.
they could be more easily impacted.
Well, that's what we're dealing with right now, with the infill development.
And is that something that you can make decisions about? You
Yeah, I
know,
think so.
if the standard is that you have to consider how close you are to the neighbors,
Mhm.
your choices are either you specify a distance from your neighbors, or you say, if you're close to your neighbors, you have to have more protection and give this over to the zoning official. So, you know, I think it's a problem that we don't have always necessarily completely qualified people to be zoning administrators. It should require some qualifications. They should know something about the subject. And
And there should be some math involved. You know, you got an eighth of an acre and you're already got, I don't know, 40% lot coverage. And you're putting in even under 200 square feet of disturbed land on that. But you're bumping up the overall impervious surface
Yeah, that's leaning.
percentage of the lot.
right, and you have to make sure you don't exceed the coverage that's required in the zoning.
That's the easy one. The tough one is, you know, what's that doing for additional levels of erosion protection
Mhm.
and impact on neighbors? If you don't have any place for your runoff with sediment to go because it's already
Right,
impervious,
The
then there's only one place it's gonna go. It's on your neighbors.
It's hard to promulgate. That's the problem.
I know, that's what
It'd be like in the opinion of this is how the language should read. I say that offhand, you know, in the opinion of the zoning administrator, in lieu of you not submitting any erosion and sedimentation, you are required to follow what that opinion is. And I'm not wordsmithing it correctly, but something along those lines. And
isn't that the case now?
that basically is the case now, but it's
Right.
not promulgated in that way.
Right,
like a threshold of pre-existing lot coverage.
Yeah, that's taken into
You know, if
consideration.
you're within
I mean,
10% of the zoning district's lot coverage already,
mhm,
and you're either disturbing a reasonable amount of land or creating additional impervious surfaces on the back end as far as long-term control
right,
runoff.
as opposed to
Um,
just the disturbance, yeah.
Do we want to break it out per district, maybe?
Well, I still think it's a kind of a percentage.
Yeah, and you could tie it to the overall lot coverage.
Because once you get to, if you've got, you know, if you hit Vermont, if you hit lot coverage in the AR district, you got an awful lot of impervious surface, you know, you got a ridiculous, and you know, yeah, you should probably go through the song and dance on that. It doesn't take much to hit that threshold when you're, you know, in the village or commercial districts or
Mhm.
some of these other areas, zones.
Chelsea, you had something?
yeah, I trying to kind of think where I was gonna speak to when Mark was talking. So I think the first thing I was gonna say is like this concept of, like he's saying, having lot coverage or thresholds of how close are you to neighbor. I think that's literally the concept behind the risk matrix, because without having something concrete that like these are the exact guidelines that are going to be applied to everyone, there's not going to be discretion. It's no, did you slip a hundy in somebody's pocket? Like there's not going to be that perception of bias, as Mark said. Like it protects everyone. It protects the town. It protects the person administering the stuff, because then they have clear, yep, it's not because I don't like you.
Mhm.
It's because here's the rules and I'm following them. Even if I don't like you, you know, like whatever.
Right.
So, you know, everybody's going to be treated the same. And like, there's not that discretion that then gets like, it just gets too much, because if you pile on all of this discretion, like, okay, maybe I'm making a discretionary decision about one thing, but then you pile on, oh wait, this one's steep, and oh wait, this one has bad soil, and oh wait, this, like, it's too many compounding choices
Mhm.
that some of them, I think, in my opinion, need to be, here's how it's laid out. Here's what we've decided are the important factors. And yeah, so that's sort of what I was going to speak to in regards to what you're speaking about on those things. And then I think the second, I guess there's two more things. So the concept of breaking it out per district, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea. I think just the risk matrix alone, or something like the risk matrix, some sort of, whatever we want to call it. I think applied to all districts, it could sort of like serve its purpose. Because you just never know, like, our districts are, how do I want to word this? The districts are weird right now. Like, up on Jericho, like I live in the high density residential district. If you look at the definition of the high density residential district in our zoning regs of like what it's meant to be,
Right.
it is not where I live. Like, it does not meet the vibe. It is not the purpose. It is not,
Right.
unless many big
Okay.
things changed and like infrastructure went in that there isn't currently there.
Yeah.
It's that part of our town doesn't, HDR and that are not, like, they don't.
We need to work on the HDR.
So yeah, so like district,
Out of
sort of
time,
like,
out
I
of
don't
place.
think that's entirely like unvaluable, but at the same time, the districts are strange in some areas, and like, I don't know, capabilities aren't, I wouldn't say necessarily tied to a district.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, just to keep the thread going, with this matrix. I mean, this would be something that would be attached to a permit application. And it really is not something that's going to be before the DRB. This is something to administer the zoning regulations for the most part, is what it is. And I just implore that anything that we land on is comprehensible and, in other words, can be comprehended by the lay person. And again, I'm always going to hit that drum of keep it simple. It doesn't have to be simple, and pander to simplicity. That's not what I mean, but you have to sort of think that, these people have no clue what's going on. But I could see that as promulgated in some form, and then have that as part of the permitting process. Certainly open to that, because we are in the process, not in the process, it's on our list to update these zoning regulations. I mean, the zoning permits. I mean, it's obviously it's in the town plan. So
Yeah, I think, obviously we want it to be functional and like usable. Like, what would be the point of all the work being put in if like it sucks at the end? Like, that's nobody's
Right.
goal. And so that's why I think the last meeting I had mentioned, like, we should definitely, like, once we sort of get to these, here's what we think will work with this risk matrix, take some projects, like have the zoning office show us recent stuff that has been permitted. How would this have applied to that? Like, we could look at this at real life scenarios, not to say we're like, so that everybody in the public knows, should this be watched back? Not to say we're picking up those things with new regs and applying new regs to old work. My point is, this is actual real life stuff that happens in town, and like, how would it work? Is it understandable? Does it make sense? Like, run some scenarios, like, and like,
Well,
I don't think, I certainly don't want to just like throw something out there and not have. Like,
it's
sort of
not us that
tested it.
need to be educated. It's the landowner that needs to be educated. I come from the world of Lake George and park within a park, and DEC there. It's mind-boggling what you can and can't do there. That doesn't really apply here, but certainly to have that. We could run scenarios, that's fine, and see how it works, and maybe we can fine tune it based on some of those scenarios. I think we could probably run a couple of those. My concern is with the property owner. And that's really what it comes down to. How much time am I going to have to spend, or Dante specifically, is going to have to spend educating the landowner on that? I mean, right now, we're constantly on the phone, or he is for the most part, getting the application complete. in the first place. That's really what it comes down to, and then sit down with the applicant and go over all that stuff. That is my concern, is the functionality, and you had mentioned that, and I think that we can certainly get an evolution to that concept.
So just
Can I
look,
bring up another subject?
well, let's
Yeah.
go on with this one for right
Did
now.
you have a third one? Did you have a third one?
Yeah, I mean, I would also love to hear what Allison has to say if it's,
Sure,
the third thing I was just gonna mention was the whole concept of like suturing it with the certificate of occupancy. And simply that I think that to me, like in my mind, makes sense with like potentially the final impervious, because then you'll be making sure you're on site to check it, because then a CO has to be issued. So like the final impervious and more the like treatment practices after the fact, having that keyed in with whatever, like say we decide it's going to be 400 feet of square feet of impervious or whatever we decide, then, or maybe it turns out that like the CO language gets changed, that like there's a square footage, or also if you needed an EPSD plan, I don't know. But anyhow, I think it makes sense for the treatment practices. As far as the construction stuff though, like you're not looking at that when you go for the CO, because their silt fence is gone,
Right.
right?
Well,
Like,
right,
that
definitely
actually
do.
leads to a point, though. A lot of times the silt fence isn't gone.
E-
It stays with the land and actually degrades over time. I've seen many projects like that.
yeah, I mean, it's not meant to, that's certainly.
Yeah, but that is a cudgel. That is our only cudgel that we have to make sure that the permit is done completely
Yeah.
per the permit.
You could require that the erosion
That's it.
is removed.
Yeah, the erosion
The
control. is
erosion
removed.
control.
Yeah, once the site is stabilized. So-
I guess my point was simply that like, if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to, it's not just caught at the CO.
Yeah. Go ahead, Allison.
Well, this is a different subject, but it's something that's been on my mind.
Yeah.
Just as I drive around the area.
Yep.
It seems like a lot of people want to come to Vermont, and it seems like, I mean, when I go out shopping or just go out in the streets, whether it's here or Burlington area, whatever, in this general vicinity,
Mhm.
I just notice that the infrastructure of streets doesn't really handle the level of traffic we got these days.
Mhm.
Nor does their design. The offsets.
No, but I mean, I'm just trying to bring this up, that we aren't in much trouble with that here in Richmond yet. But, but I just think we should be mindful of it. I mean, of course, I'm kind of a preservationist of the big old farm and all that, but really, I don't want to see Vermont spoiled by a bunch of people that just want to get out of another place they spoiled. And that sounds very unfriendly, but if you know what I'm saying.
I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
But maybe we can combine the roads with putting in a storm system. Municipal
well,
storm
yeah.
system.
And, you know, maybe that.
When we redo the roads, we can put in
Yeah,
the new storm system.
That's another
gonna be
thing.
anytime
Let's
soon.
get the requirements that can handle what's actually coming our way and has already begun to
Good.
come.
I mean, there are very few panaceas in zoning and development, but having a stormwater system in the town is one of those to help with development. And and we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
No
We're
doubt.
not gonna do that anytime
And
soon.
we could take that money that we're gonna spend on the Emerald Trail and put it towards stormwater.
Amen.
So anyway, so just getting back to the planning policy choice
Think,
involving land disturbance. Oh, did you have
I talked
something?
about what I,
Okay. Looking at the matrix, it looks like if you have a flat piece of land where there's no slope, you can disturb up to 20,000 square feet of land without having an engineered plan. Is that
seems like a lot.
what we want? Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
It seems like a lot. I mean,
seems like an applicant
even on a
plan would,
10-acre lot, 20,000 square feet is a lot of space, 100 by 200.
right, and
That's bigger than most houses.
there's no
Bigger than mine.
allowance for how close it is to anything or anything in the matrix. And also, I'm still interested in what the basic EPS.
That's just talking about the low risk handbook. So using the low risk handbook as your baseline.
Using the whole handbook as your baseline?
Yeah, meaning like you go into the handbook and you
Yep.
say, look at the handbook and you say, okay, there's, yeah, like
Right.
you just choose practices from the handbook that work for you or you want to implore.
Call it à la carte.
I
erosion,
mean-
sedimentation.
Okay, Trevor?
So if like the project's small, you don't have to do a lot. So like maybe you put like a tiny silt fence around whatever your thing is, because you can do that in the low risk handbook. So I think the way that I sort of wrote this is that you don't have to show it on the plan if it's a small project, but you're supposed to still follow those practices to keep your stuff on site, your silt and when needed. But then like when you're over a certain square footage of disturbed land, then you need to put it on your plan so that people know what you're doing. Zoning office knows what you're gonna be doing to account for your thing. And that's sort of how I think that was what I did for like the second level. And then if you disturb enough land, then you need an engineer prepared or some sort of professionally prepared plan. And that was how I structured it. And I picked the 20,000 square feet because it's like roughly half an acre. The state requires plan at 1 acre. So I just picked half of that. That's obviously not not tied. That number was just, I picked half of what.
It's a placeholder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's sort of how I structured it, was like, everyone sort of has to follow these practices, but if it's small, you really don't have to do a whole lot. If you're not near your neighbors, you have grass around, you've pretty much already done it by just leaving the grass there. Like a lot of these things just mean if you leave the vegetation in place and don't just dirt up everything. Or, drive your tractors around on it, you don't have to do anything, other than maybe a fence around your stockpile. A lot of it's pretty simple as long as you're not doing a bunch of other things that aren't necessary for your project, especially if it's small.
Right, but that leaves it up to the zoning administrator to decide if you're
Yeah, if it's
doing,
small enough, then they can decide like, oh, this looks really
right,
close to the neighbor, you need to tell me what you're gonna do here.
right. So
What
the
if it's-
zoning administrator is making those decisions,
Yeah,
correct?
smaller level, they can decide if they want to, but it's, I think, once you hit a certain threshold, they need to put on the plan. Zoning office doesn't decide what
I
to
think-
do or not. I think it's, I don't know, that would be, sorry.
Yeah,
I'd have to relook at the two matrices. So
Change
One,
around.
one of them is the one we looked at last time, which is
Right.
definitely more like,
extensive.
yes, and more like accounts for everything so that there's less discretion. It has, distance from things, distance from neighbors, distance from surface water. It talks about slope, and then the simplified matrix is more like, I think, leaning into when do you need a professional plan versus not. Regardless, I think the stuff is still shown on the plan.
Dante and or whoever my zoning administrator or whoever is going to be the zoning administrator is not going to have a problem with the matrix. It's the landowner. And that just, I know I'm going in circles, but it always comes back to the landowner because they're the one who are going to look at this permit and say, let's make this matrix as simple as possible and try to get to where we want to go with this matrix. Because I'm starting to come on board with this, to be honest with you. As another sheet and addendum to the permitting process for the homeowner. That's really, for me, I can't implore how important that is for it to be simple, yet get to where we want to go. Maybe not holistically, but what do we want to stop? We want to stop erosion and sedimentation. We want to protect wetlands. We want to protect our slopes and so on and so forth.
And it's definitive. So if you have to literally walk a landowner through the process, you can do that, add the numbers up in front of him and say, boom, you're qualifying for an engineered plan, or boom, this is the minimum you need to do.
And there's no ambiguity in the matrix. There
Exactly.
can't be. I mean, that's the point.
Right.
But I guess I'm advocating for you for this. I mean, the more I think about it, but simplicity to me is what needs to happen.
Mhm.
That's my 2 cents, and I'll just keep saying it.
Yeah. Numbers you can measure and clearly define with minimal ambiguity until you end up with the final qualifying number. And that puts you where you are. whether you like it or not.
See, I could see landowners filling that out, and it's sort of like the RBES, you know, it's like, we're not experts here. We have no idea if it's going to be good. So to make it as simple as possible, and the landowner fills it out, we'll have to check that over,
Yeah.
like we do with any permit. I mean, we check it over as best we can, and we try to get it as complete as we possibly can based on the regs. A lot of it's ambiguity in there too. I think that's why I'm starting to lean that way, to be honest with
But
you.
yeah, you'll know, you've got the lot size, you got the driveway that's 500 feet, 10 feet wide, boom, there's 5,000 feet.
Yeah,
Here's a house, whatever dimensions are, boom. Add a garage, boom. You get the numbers right there that'll calculate up, at least those first two steps. I wasn't really thinking about the driveway when I said 20,000 feet seems like a lot, but
Well, the 20,000 feet is for the erosion. It's disturbed land.
Yes.
Rather than, but maybe you weren't thinking about the driveway for the disturbed land even, let alone for the impervious surface.
I was thinking of, the building itself, which you've got a pre-established building you're adding. I was thinking like, oh, you're adding a garage. You're building an add-on garage. That's one thing. But if you got to run driveway to it,
well, they would still require a permit if it was just a driveway.
right? So that has to count. So maybe those numbers are more reasonable if you're.
Yeah, all kind of.
Yeah, and one of the original purposes of doing this was to capture the smaller projects. So the state permits start at a certain level. If this is half that, is that capturing enough of the smaller projects that we want? Do we want it to be lower? Is this going to be what we want? It's another thing that kind of makes a difference, whether you're out in the AR or whether you're in the village with the 8th.
I know it does, and that's unfortunate. It seems unfair to people in the village, but the simple fact is that you're far more likely to impact your neighbors
Right, if you live.
if you
close
work
to
in the
them.
village.
Yeah, right.
That's just the
That's-
nature of the beast.
Right.
It's unfortunate for infill, and I'm not against infill, but you can't do it at the expense of your neighbors.
Mhm.
Which happens often.
Right.
Trevor, you had something you wanted to say?
I would just suggest starting with the matrix before reading this, because this is sort of talking about the things in the matrix. And if you look at what's actually in it right now, then you can see because this is talking about things that you're not looking at right now. I don't know if
Right,
that
well,
makes
it's
sense.
the policy questions that relate to
Yeah.
relate to the
As long as
matrix.
you've read the
so-
matrix before, then you'll know what it's talking about. I just wasn't sure how familiar people were with it,
Mhm.
but.
Well, we looked at the matrix last time. We can look at it again if you want
Different.
first.
I simplified it.
It is different.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's, I removed over half of the items in it. It made it much simpler.
Yes.
I mean, because the original zoning reg were 29 pages, but I think those are 15. So for what I wrote, I got rid of a lot of it. And I took the feedback from the last one and was like, oh, these are more complicated to administer. These are hard for landowners to know. And so I removed them, or I moved soil types to a thing that the zoning office could look at if they want to reduce the risk on the project in the end.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. You don't even have to do that unless oh, I'm trying to reduce my risk. Now we'll look at this. Zoning office can help me, but not every site has to figure that out up front. That was what I tried to reduce the load on landowner and on zoning office. And I have an application, I made the whole thing too, but to actually go through it and check it, I just didn't want to bother until I knew more of what you were looking, I wanted more of a final version of, before I went through, redid the application, where you put in all the numbers, and you put in the impervious, and you put in the rain amount, and you figure out how many cubic, feet of storage you might want, depending on what you decide for your storm thresholds. I just didn't want to redo the whole thing again until.
Maybe a good exercise is to take a zoning permit and slap the matrix on it.
That's what I did.
And try to get it down to one page or a half a page or something that can get to where we want to go.
Well, there's some things I'd like to see added to this
Yeah.
this matrix.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
You know,
I'm gonna,
And some things taken away
Yeah, no.
too.
yeah, these modifications were definitely Trevor sort of trying to take feedback from our last meeting and modify it. I, just for the record, lean definitely preferential to the previous matrix that is more specific. I think there could be some things like sort of removed from it, but definitely, I certainly find myself leaning more into like clear, concise, no gray area sort of specificity.
So, but the point of the matrix is to determine whether you need a plan that's prepared by a professional or you can prepare your own plan, right? That's the only point of the matrix. It doesn't really deal with what's required of you. Exactly.
True, you still have to have a
You either
erosion
prepare it
control
or
system.
somebody prepares it. And if you have a low enough score on the matrix so you can prepare your own, then you have to read this book and do what's in it. Is that
Or
what
have
we
Keith
want?
explain it to
Well,
you.
that's.
Or you just go the David Sunshine route, and maybe you're a landowner who decided, as David suggested, that like he said, we should just require engineered plans for everything from everyone.
Right?
That-
Well,
that's-
that would be simple.
So
It would be
what I was gonna
simple.
say is for landowners who have that same mindset of like, I don't want to deal with this, they can make that personal choice. Like there's nothing stopping if our zoning regs, they went through the matrix and it said, oh no, you can prepare the plans yourself.
No,
they're
but
like-
that means they have to read this book. They're going to find that
No, they could
complicated.
still hire an engineer if they wanted.
Absolutely.
They don't, that doesn't stop them from hiring an engineer.
Okay, so they're not going to hire an engineer. And are they going to read this book?
Oh, you'd have to ask the landowner individually.
I mean, if they
Are they
don't,
going to? What do you think?
Probably not, no.
but if they
I mean-
don't, and they submit plans self-drafted to the zoning office,
It's so,
and there's nothing on the plans that has any,
it's mind-boggling the way the rules are set up right now, and I know that it's like we're legislatively bound to make sure they get this handbook. That's all it says. It doesn't say what they're gonna be using.
Or what's required
Or
of
what's
them from
required.
this book,
And
which
you
is
s-
not
So
everything.
you're thinking that they know what they're talking about here, but this is where we come in, and this is what I'm trying to get away from, and this is why we are where we are. Where the hell?
yeah, so I guess not just blanket requiring the low risk handbook, then it would require them to review it. It's not if you've read it, it's not all that of a complicated document.
No,
It's
it's not
pretty well written,
complicated.
especially the newer version. They modified it in, I think, 25.
Hmm.
It's just people are gonna glaze over.
Certainly, but if somebody like say I'm building a detached garage and I go to the zoning office and I have self-drafted plans because my matrix says I don't need professional plans, and I hand in my plans to the zoning office and it has a square on it for where all my existing buildings are, and I put a square for where my garage is gonna be, and I said it's gonna be this big and I'm gonna do these things, but nowhere on my plan do I indicate that I'm gonna put silt fence up, the zoning office would see that.
Right.
They would see there's nothing on the plan for
Mhm.
erosion. And I guess like the point is, if you don't need an engineered plan, it's a pretty low threshold of you just have to have something on your plan to show that you thought about erosion and you're planning to account for it.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, if it's not in the plan, it's not enforceable. So like,
One of the, yep.
Okay.
No, I agree. I mean, installing a silt fence, although it's not rocket science, it's not easy to do it properly.
no,
And
it's
I-
not.
you don't expect a landowner to do that. I can't tell you how many silt fences I've seen backwards. Obviously, most of them don't get keyed in. But that would be something that we would want in place as part of the permit, as part of the stakeout process, is we want, what's the use of putting erosion and sedimentation controls in the ground after you've already disturbed the ground? These controls need to be in situ, in place before you disturb the ground. So, we've got to make sure, so I mean, there's a lot of compliance going on with this too, but this is the purpose. This is what we want, and this is what we do right now. Not on a large scale, everything is on a very small scale.
So I guess, Virginia, speaking to what you're just saying, like, are we gonna expect people to read that handbook?
Mhm.
I think in an earlier version of the regs, and I don't think the ones, I can't remember if the current simplified ones have it, but in the earlier version of the regs, instead of a lot of like shoulds and suggestions, and like, I don't remember what you called it,
Requirements and guidelines.
guidelines.
Yeah.
Like, so rather than having things in the guidelines sort of early on, I know I had mentioned like, maybe we just put in there that like, you have to have erosion measures and pick from these three. Like you know what I mean? If you don't, if we don't think people are going to read the handbook, then we can sort of do that work for them ahead of time by, instead of having it in guidelines, in requirements, say all projects require erosion, something, right? Like you have to do something.
Yeah.
And here's, you can pick from these 5 options.
Yep. Well, and that, I mean,
If I guess if we think that the handbook and coming up with their own like idea is too daunting.
yep. Well, there's a certain simplicity about just saying, use the handbook, because that is what I put in the alternative number 2.
Yeah.
Under a zoning permit, what is required is you have a plan based on this book. And you have a stormwater plan based on the other book. So, you know, it's fine. We can, I don't know. I don't know which is going to be easier for people to have specific things or to have just the book and say, read the book, or,
Isn't perfection the enemy of good? I mean, we wanna get this good. You know, because it's bad right now. I'd settle for good at this point.
yeah, and it's,
Trevor?
This is like things I've talked about just with Chelsea, but like there's possibly like to assist with this on a town level, like we have a town engineer. Like, I don't know what it would cost to have them be like, oh, here, like, how many hours would it cost to be like, what do you think about this? To then not put the burden on landowners necessarily, be like, oh, we're gonna do we get 1 hour for, like, I don't know how many permits are gonna be, would require this, and how many like would then be bumped up to require the engineer, or like, in order to like, how much would that cost? Like, I don't know how many permits it cover, but like, to just assist in like, oh, here's the, slope fence. This is the slope, you're gonna have to, you know, this kind of rock here, it should have this. Like, I don't know how long it'll take. If they're small projects, or at least the way I designed it, and you're able to come up with the plan yourself, there shouldn't be that many practices that have to happen. But I'm just trying to think, like, to make it easier for landowners, like, if there's some budget that, I don't know, could assist with that.
Well, to answer that question, the budget would be training for staff.
Yeah.
Honestly, and that is in the budget at this point. And I'm no expert, but I am familiar with it, and I can provide that guidance right now, but I'm retiring in 2 years.
I even think that if you had like, you could just pull the silt fence thing out of the low risk handbook, make it its own little pamphlet, like, you're gonna need silt fence. Like,
What's that?
here's the like, thing on, like, cause you don't need to read the whole thing, most of it doesn't apply, like, if it's a low, the way I just wrote it, but if it's really low risk, you don't have to do too many things.
It's a
So
self.
pick the things at once, and so like, I feel like there's only of us could assist them with that, like, yeah, you needed this one, like, it shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, but that
That's
requires
my
thinking,
intention.
Trevor. That requires thinking from the zoning office, and I don't know if we have that bandwidth anymore. I'm being flip when I say that.
yeah, well,
And I'm
So-
trying to make this like, at least in my mind, like, if you wanna do this, I don't want it to be difficult for people. Like, what is there, we can make it easier, I don't wanna make it difficult when people try to administer it, I should be
Yep.
easy for the people trying to go through the process to do it, it should be easy for the people trying to administer the process to do it. And then, if it's really too complicated for either of them in general, then it should be bumped out to someone who knows what they're doing. Even if there are people who probably maybe build it themselves, it just becomes too difficult to manage on both ends.
That's thought.
That was like how I was thinking about it, I don't know.
So we're looking at this in 2 different steps, 4 steps, if you think about the erosion control during construction, and then the stormwater management afterwards.
Yeah.
But we gotta set up a matrix to classify what they need to do. Do you not even need to submit a plan? You know, I'm putting in a deck out back. Yes, it's 300 feet, but I'm disturbing 20 square feet of soil.
so a
You just
baseline.
show us
Nothing. Don't even look at the book.
Show us where it is.
Show us where it is. Here's a post.
Setback
Done.
good.
Have a nice day.
Yep.
Right.
And then you have, okay, you're in that, you have to have a stormwater management plan, but you qualify for doing it yourself. Boom, you've got the book. Take it home, read it, look it up online,
Mhm,
talk to Keith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
mhm.
There, and then, okay, you gotta do an engineered form. So
If you need a site plan for any other reason,
Well, you need a site plan no matter what, right? I mean, we're
Well-
writing the new regs that a site plan is mandatory, right? Keith?
Well, it's mandatory for a permit, yes.
except site
Yeah,
plan.
anytime
review
you
is not
walk in and
mandatory.
want to do anything short of, a 10 by 10 shed, I think is the exemption.
You need a plan for that. You need
You
a drawing
need to
for
have
everything.
some sort of site plan that's gonna have the review, but do you need stormwater? So the site plan has to take care of itself.
But the site plan and the site plan review are different, which is very confusing, and I have tried to correct that, but it is not flying. Because for many cases, a zoning permit requires site plan review. If you
Site
have
plan
site
review by
plan
who?
review
The DRB.
by the DRB, conditional use, subdivision, PUD requires a site plan review.
That's
Which
right.
requires a professionally designed plan, which will include
Very
this
true.
stuff. So that's all of those uses. So the only ones we're talking about that need a matrix are the ones that don't require site plan review.
Yes,
So that's the single family homes
Duplexes.
that the matrix will apply to. Those are the
something
only
that's not a conditional use.
conditional
Not an
use.
allowed use.
D or most permitted uses require a site plan, only the exempted ones don't.
That's a totally different beast that we're talking
Yes.
about. We're don't even think about that right now. We're ignoring site plans because yes, if you're doing a site plan, it has to be evidently it has to be an engineered, I didn't know that, but good to know. It has to be an engineered plan.
Right, well, right now, the
Yes,
DRB has
EP, just-
discretion of saying it does or doesn't, which we would like to avoid.
Well, we can tackle that later. Right? First, we want to figure out,
But if they're already having a site plan review, they will have a professionally designed plan.
right? And they don't even have to do the matrix.
No, they don't, because
So,
this.
but
the
we're
road
talking,
will, you
right
know,
now, all we're talking about is the in-between
The permitting, right. the-
In-
the
in-
specific
in-
permit.
in the application, and that
Yeah.
is assessing the matrix to determine whether you can just describe what you're doing on your own, following those guidelines, or you get an engineered plan.
Right.
And then once you have the engineered plan, you're done. But then you have the second, or steps 3 and 4 are under the threshold of an engineered plan, stormwater management. So you don't have an engineered plan in this review. You've done your own, you've done the matrix, you don't qualify for an engineered plan. You're gonna move forward with getting the permit. You're gonna be granted the permit to build. And part 3 is, okay, the finished product, is that going to warrant stormwater management? And that part 3 also is a matrix.
Mhm.
And that matrix, slightly different questions, more about runoff.
Right.
That's where square footage comes in. That's where lot sizes come in.
Right,
Potential impacts on your neighbors, long term. And then you have monitoring or implementation of the stormwater management plan. And that's going to be handled by, keeping it on file, I guess. I don't really know. So that, it's on the books with the town clerk, and the town clerk, if somebody, property exchanges or whatever, there's a, what do you call that? I don't know, rider or something on it? That would say,
It's a deed restriction or something.
yeah, that says, okay, there's this, you have a stormwater plan
Hmm.
set up, you have to maintain this. What's a condition of it at the time of sale? At least at the time of sale, it has to be a functioning.
Mhm.
That's administratively burdensome for sure. I mean, in a perfect world, yes. We would have
Well, I mean,
an officer do that, but yeah.
but really, it's the land owner, the person buying the land, buying the property is ultimately responsible if it's not a functioning system. So the realtor law, they're going to want to make sure that if there is a condition of a stormwater management plan, that the stormwater management plan is functioning at the time of sale.
so is,
Otherwise, it's the new owner's liability and they have to dig everything up if it gets discovered. Sort of like doing an assessment on a, whether there's a haz waste on site? You know, are there any buried oil drums on site? Well, you know, if you don't disclose it or you don't remediate, it's found out and it's not remediated, the person owning the property at the time is responsible for remediating it. So when you buy a house, you want to make sure that part of the assessment is that there is no buried oil.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is these are the 4 steps. I think we would want to focus on the 2 matrices. If we can get the matrix done, then the stormwater plan can sort of take care of itself, the homeowner's plan.
Well, I mean, that's the
Or
question.
not stormwater, I'm sorry, but the erosion control.
So if you have a site plan review required for your permit,
Yeah.
is that going to, in your way of thinking, include both the erosion control set of features and the stormwater management features on your engineered plan that you're required to have?
Yeah.
So both of those things are taken care of. So for subdivision, PUD, and conditional use, you will have an engineered plan that includes both erosion control features and stormwater management features.
Right.
Correct?
And some sort of
It's all taken.
later on the title that,
Yeah,
the
and
E-
all of those things about the having the.
yeah. So it has to be
perpetuity
tracked.
and all that
going
kind
on.
of stuff. So.
So it won't
that
necessarily be on,
Site plan review.
Yeah.
Section.
right.
So
We're not there yet though.
all we're talking about, well, that's an engineered site plan that includes those things.
CRB approved.
Yes.
DRB approved, stormwater management and erosion control. The matrix is only for things that do not require site plan review.
And doesn't require an engineered E EPSC.
Well, the matrix determines whether or not it requires an engineered plan
Hmm.
for both, or one or the other, maybe not both, one or the other. A little unusual, but possible. What do you think?
I separate the two. I separate erosion and sedimentation, E&S. That's the way I term it, and stormwater. I don't know how we can require a landowner to develop a stormwater plan, nor our office to develop a stormwater plan. That's why I've always pushed for the first flush. And I know it's a concept that some don't understand or don't, I'm sorry, that don't appreciate it, but it becomes a passive system that hopefully does not require a whole deal of maintenance, a whole idea of maintenance. You can't expect us to design to a 10-year storm. You just can't. You know, that's where we don't have that ability, nor do we have that authority. So that's why I always lean towards that first flush.
You know what that
That's
means,
always-
first flush? Just
So
offhand.
what do you mean by you can't
No.
design it? Cause it would be the.
I mean,
applicant.
What are you designing it to, though? What standard are you designing it to?
Well, if you,
Saying what to, sorry.
The stormwater management plan for those that did not require DRB approval.
So for operational, like treatment, ongoing treatment of impervious surface, that's what you're talking about?
yes,
For,
stormwater management of the completed project, post-construction phase.
Yeah,
Is
so that's
stormwater
something we
management.
decide. What do we want to have people design it to? The subdivision regs right now are a 25-year storm.
right, but that requires an engineer with permitting, administrative permitting. For those that don't require DRB review, site plan review, don't require through the matrix, the hiring of a professional to design that stormwater plan. What are we designing those projects to?
Oh, so you're
Low
saying,
impact development is the only thing I can think of.
so you're saying for a applicant prepared plan?
Yep.
How will anybody know if it's meeting the threshold of like a 25 or 10-year storm? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have that ability, but we
No.
have the ability to require low impact development practices. We certainly can I certainly can get Dante up to speed on that. That's not rocket science.
But a lot of.
But it's only for first flush. It's not for overall management. That's where I'm coming at with this. It's-
And I agree with you, that's step 3, the stormwater matrix that we'll flush out.
As it were.
Not to borrow a term, but we'll put together. That's gonna decide whether or not you need an engineered stormwater
And
management.
that's fine, but I'm talking about.
But if you
the
don't
below-
need it, right, that's what that step 3 is to decide whether you need or don't need an engineered stormwater management system. Cause you're right, you and
And
you
if
and Dante are not going to be engineering stormwater containment
a-
systems for runoff, nor is a homeowner who's going to be skilled. They're going to have to, just like a wastewater treatment system that they have, their their septic or their well, it's going to have to be engineered. You can't just drill a well. You got to have certain requirements accomplished
Mhm.
and permitted by the state. In the same way, that step 3 matrix of the stormwater management assessment is going to determine, okay, you're disturbing a whole bunch of stuff and maybe you need, because of the layout, you're going to have you're going to need an engineered plan, but theoretically there could be an instance where you may have to engineer the erosion control, but your land's big enough and everything else, and all things said and done, you're not going to actually need a stormwater management plan engineered.
But what if you don't need a plan designed by a professional for stormwater management? What about those people? Are they?
They don't have to do anything.
They don't have to do anything?
They should, but we can't make them do that because we can't have the technical expertise to ensure that whatever they do is going to satisfy. Now, there might be different levels of that engineered plan that they're going to have to implement, but they're probably going to need an engineer to do some sort of assessment of impervious surfaces and volumes and numbers that are way beyond the average human being. And we can't put that on the zoning administrator.
And the landowner specifically,
And we can't trust the landowner
But if you tell
to
them,
come up with their own system and say, oh, this is what I'm gonna do.
Here's a book.
if.
Yeah,
do
I'm
the
gonna
feedback
bury a bunch of 55-gallon drums
That's my preferred approach.
and fill them with sand. And that's gonna be my dry well. You know what I mean? No, you can't. If they fail matrix 3, step 3, the matrix for the stormwater runoff, then they're going into an engineered stormwater
So-
management, and that will go
Anything below
into
that?
the deed,
Wait, give us a minimum of anyway.
right?
Well,
Does
I
that
mean-
seem like a reasonable?
Well, I mean, the
approach to
question
this?
is, so you want to say basically everybody has to, for stormwater management, follow the low impact development guide. Many of those things in the low impact development guide have maintenance
Oh, absolutely,
associated with them.
absolutely. And I
So
don't think I
you're-
would require it though. That's the difference. Because we're introducing something totally new.
Right,
And this has, for me, a dual purpose. It has an educational purpose and it has a first flush reduction of phosphorus purpose. That's to me. After that, there is maintenance required with it. At least we're getting something. Is it the best thing we can get? No, gosh, no, it's not.
and how are they going to know how to design a system that manages the
If they are,
flush, if
open
they're
to that,
under the matrix?
if they're open to that, we would help them with that. But that leads back to Trevor's question on having assistance with stuff like that. And that requires training.
But you wouldn't require it.
Wait, you're talking stormwater
Stormwater, yeah.
containment?
But
You can give them some advice, but I'm thinking that the matrix, step 3, is either technically you don't have to do anything but you should.
Right.
And yeah, you have to do something and it has to be engineered and in the deed and on the books. It's not on you guys to help him design the 55-gallon drums he's going to bury in the ground and throw, is it 1-inch stone or 2-inch stone? You know what I mean?
I've got a
That's
story.
that's not their call. That's not your responsibility.
Chelsea.
So
Sorry.
I was gonna ask you a question. So the way that you're perceiving this, or like sort of your thought on this, like the third step, and if they don't need a plan, they don't. So are you thinking that means there's like this lower threshold for engineered plans for that, for these higher risk things in the matrix?
Yes.
Right? Like, so if you're higher risk based on the things that we as a planning commission with input from the town or whatever, I don't know, however we do our thing. If you are higher risk, you inherently will just need a plan and you'll be designing to whatever we decide is the appropriate storm size. If you are so low risk that you don't need a plan, then I mean, I guess we could still say like,
It's a good idea.
don't be a jerk and like
Yes, yeah.
have some swales, save some trees.
Yeah.
There could still, we could still have requirements for sort of like the EPSC, the it sounds like I was gonna say edamame, the sedimentation stuff, sort of like that, where it's like, okay, the baseline for everyone, if we choose to go this way, is, you know, put up some silt fence, make sure you're not dumping mud into your neighbor, whatever. Similar sort of storyline could go here, where the baseline is try to maintain some grass between your house and, you know, your neighbor, or, you know, whatever. We could still have some baseline requirements for those really low risk things, but then
Yeah. That's
when
kind
they
of what
jump
that's
into, like, the
kind of what
higher
I've
risk.
envisioned all along.
Yeah, it's
And then
hard to require it at that level.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
It can't require it.
We would want them to consider, because we, in our wheelhouse, we can consider low impact development standards. So,
You give in Chelsea a high five or you get a close yet? Far away.
anyway.
Sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
Sure, go ahead.
Defer to the chair.
Yeah.
So like at the end of like my like policy thing, this is the part that like is the part I was struggling with. Like I was like, you really gotta figure out what you're gonna do in the end, because the 25-year storm, like I figured that out for like I think it did like 400 square foot roof on a shed, and it's a lot of water. Like you're not gonna be able to do it with just rain barrels, unless you have a lot of like it's
That's not the intent. That's not.
And so like I was like, that's not gonna, so I was like, that's why, I mean, at the end of the policy thing, I put out the numbers for what is a 25-year storm.
Yep.
On.
And those get plugged
I
into
put
an
on- I
hydrocad.
gave the whole, yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of that, I put like, this is what a 1 hour storm is.
Yeah.
Here's the different ones, here's I think I did 24, and then I did them all to the 1,000-year amounts, and then gave the compensate perspective.
And those need to be updated.
But no, these I pulled from NOAA, so they're based on like real data.
Today's NOAA, under this current administration.
So if they don't need an engineered plan, then it's a free for all. It's a don't be a jerk to your neighbor, but it's also a fairly low threshold. And once you hit that threshold, then we have to decide, okay, do you have to engineer to a
10-year.
10-year, 25, 100-year, what are you know, but then once we write that in, then they have to engineer to that. Here,
Yeah.
that's part of the
And
deal.
keep in mind, those frequency of storms come with sizing issues.
Sure.
The higher the storm frequency and rainfall, the larger the system you need to have.
Sure.
Equates to,
I know.
or some people would say,
So in like the stuff that I watched, like and videos and stuff, there's someone who like they built a greenhouse on top of their deck. And this is not Vermont, but they had to like capture the stormwater from it. So they had to put gutters at the end of their deck, and then underneath the deck, they had to put plastic material
Mhm.
that would capture the water, bring it all the way to the gutters at the end,
Mhm.
capture it, and then they had to put it in 2 giant rain barrels that were ones that you had to get freight delivered to their house. And they installed this all themselves. They came up with it all themselves because they just knew the total they were adding on the thing. The town said, I need to put this much capacity. I had to capture it. Here's how you do it. Put a gutter, goes into my barrels under my deck, and then there's a small outlet on the bottom so that all the water goes in. And I think it's based on my rough calculation, it's probably like a 1 inch in 1 hour, which is, I think, the general first flush amount to capture roughly 1 inch of rain. They're different. It depends on where you are and what they use, but like, you're not gonna really want to do more than that if you're on the low end, because it's just too much to
Yeah,
hold. But then you just have a small outlet, all the water goes in. And then if there's more water than that, it just goes out the overflow, and then, but then it just slowly goes down the small pipe on the bottom and releases slowly over time, so then it doesn't dump it all out at once, and then,
And was that engineered?
yeah. You just calculate the cubic feet you need, and then you just
Yeah, I mean, it's
measure it.
it's the same, yeah, same concept of, of capturing water for consumption. I mean, I'm trying to design that at my camp at this point, you get your 550 gallon totes and you got to figure the gutters out, but there is a first flush component to that. First flush is dirty. It's very dirty. So my first flush isn't to capture stormwater for 1 inch events. It's to capture rain events when it hasn't rained for days or weeks because the accumulation of grit and grime and all that other stuff on the surfaces. It cleans it. To design to an event is going to be very difficult, I think, to administer, unless we can come up with some type of
Well, that's
plug and
what,
play thing.
that's what I'm wondering. So if you guys are actually talking about unengineered,
Yeah, there's
unprofessional
Yeah, you can do it.
stormwater containment. So maybe step 4 will allow based on impervious surface and slopes. Is there some easy guidelines in there that say, okay, well, yeah, you put on a 10 by 20 shed, but it pushed you over the threshold of your square footage of your lot size. How are you going to contain that? And if they can come and present a containerized system that would capture what, a 1 year, 2 year, whatever we say, then they can just put it in themselves. But it still goes on the deed.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know, but that's getting wickedly complex, involving lawyers.
Kinda, yeah. But I mean,
You have a permit though, and it's approved, and then you're done, and then you like modify your thing around and like didn't do it for the permit anymore. So like it kind of like
right, so there's
permit to do this thing, if it's not there, then you changed it. You're not supposed to do that.
and then all the containers crack and they throw them out and they don't replace them, which we don't have any control over. But then when land sale occurs, it shows up on the deed as requiring stormwater containment. This house doesn't have it, you're liable for fixing that before you sell it, kind of like you're responsible for having fire alarms, in your house at the time of the sale. You've got to have, even if it's, just tacked up on a wall with a 6-month battery.
Mm.
You have to have a smoke alarm on each floor. It's mandatory when you
Right.
sell the house.
Sort of easier to enforce that, I think, than, I mean, a lot of these things in the low risk handbook are like rain gardens or,
You can make a rain garden, I would think, because if
well,
rain barrels, like if you're like downslope, you can't put your water there. But if you have a flattish area, you can figure out like how many cubic feet.
right,
and
but
it's
it
pretty easy.
requires maintenance.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the
plants die.
Yeah, you can
That's
also just do a
something.
low area.
Swales
One-
fill in, you know what I mean? So the question, if we can't, I mean,
That's why it has,
legal it is to, Keith clearly doesn't want it to be on the deed and be required, maintenance required, but I don't know how you can have these low impact development systems without saying that if they're not maintained, then, but.
so
that's
we're not going to
pretty
be
complicated.
responsible for going out every year and assessing your stormwater containment system. But at least at the sale of the home, it has to be validated. If it's put in as a
Condition.
condition of the deed, which is on file,
Yeah,
I think that's easy. So then we just need to either get some advice from folks about simple systems. Like, okay, you have to do something, but it's not at a certain threshold, therefore you can engineer it yourself.
but does it have
And
to be
if that's,
maintained?
the matrix will have that factor of either don't have to do anything. Yeah, you have to do something, but you can build it yourself if it's on file with the deed. And then there's, okay, you need an engineered stormwater containment system because, you're at, maximum lot coverage on an 1/8 acre in the middle of the town, and you can't, you can't contain it on your property without excessive engineered infrastructure.
Chelsea?
I was just gonna mention, so I don't know, but it might, if we are interested in like sort of an important thing to us, and I think I would say it's important to people in town who think that we need stormwater bylaws. It came up during town planning process and things like that. So like, I think that anybody who thinks like this should be a thing would also agree with what Mark is saying, in that like it should be maintained, right? Because what's the point if it's gonna just go away, or somebody's gonna, purposely remove it? Maybe they're just like, for save face, like I put my rain barrel here and then I just get rid of it.
It's ugly.
So exactly. Yeah, it just passes around town.
And the neighbor complains, and can go and say, wait a second, you're supposed to have stormwater containment on this site, and then you can look up the deed and say, look at right here, you've got, you agreed to have stormwater containment, and now you don't have any system at all for stormwater containment. You have to fix it. So it's protects the neighbor.
So 2 questions I have about that, because again, like I said, I personally do agree that there should be some sort of like thing, right, to encourage this or require it. 2 questions I have that I don't know who will have the answers, but somebody hopefully can figure it out, is one, if a permit is approved with like stormwater stuff on it, right, as part of the permit, was on like whether they drafted the plans themselves or not.
Stormwater system, yeah.
So there's a stormwater system. Let's say I drafted the plans myself, and I'm going to put in a rain garden or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
If I show that rain garden on my plans and I build that rain garden, and then in 3 years I put a pool where the rain garden is, and I say, screw you. If my neighbor then complains and says, well, now all of Chelsea's water is dumping on me because she put a dang pool where her rain garden was, isn't that enforceable?
I mean, if we have the time and the power to do that, yes. I mean, I think there is a compliance arm to the zoning administrator, but.
Well, yeah, so, I was just asking like, though, for like even stuff like that, right? Like not like actively while the permit's open, like even after the permit's done, the house is built, if they then go and change something that doesn't comply with that permit or that directly
Yeah, so.
violates
to
zoning.
answer-
I'm just asking, like, legally, is that enforceable? Like, isn't it like a 15-year window?
Yeah, I
that-
think it's an enforceable, you'd have to come back and revise the permit if you're gonna change the permit, but as you know, I mean, but if somebody's coming in your scenario, they're putting the pool over the rain
Yeah.
garden. Somebody who's got half a brain, that's a zoning administrator, will see that's part of an approved permit and say, hey, well, you can't put it here. You're going to have to revise this other permit. So, but.
Yeah, well, my
So, yes, it
scenario,
is
yeah,
enforceable.
my scenario is probably I'm asking for permission, but like, I'm a jerk and I put the pool in without permission, or like
We would
whatever
have
the
that.
case may be.
Until
You
a
know,
neighbor
where I
complains.
filled it in, or if a neighbor complained,
Yep.
and I was just kind of trying to wrap my head around, there is some sort of follow-up available to the town, whether they choose to take it or not, or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to argue that, but like, that's there. But then also the thing about something being enforceable to the deed or like found during a sale, I don't think it necessarily has to be incorporated into the deed via lawyers. Like, things are filed in our town land records that I think show
That's
up.
what I was thinking. I know,
Yeah,
I was saying deed, but I didn't know the right.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be something where like you need a lawyer to draft an amendment to your actual parcel deed. I think it literally can be something filed with the town land records, and it could even, again, I'm not a lawyer and we'd have to fact check this, but I'm pretty sure it could even be like a what's the word? Like a blank form that the town provides people with, of like, here you go, here's the form, fill in the blanks. I, Chelsea Brooks, agree that I'm gonna maintain this wet pond for the foreseeable future, and everyone that I sell my house to is responsible to do so as well. I certify this to the town of Richmond. And then that gets filed in land records. That would show up during a title search for a sale.
Yeah.
Like it's on the file in the land records, it's an agreement.
Right.
I mean, it's no different than like the umpteen number of great agreements on file with the land records for Greystone.
Well, I conceptually, I understand it. I think implementation wise, I think that's extremely difficult. I mean, is it worth the time to promulgate that at this point when we have so many other issues in the town? And I'm not poo-pooing it at all. I mean, it seems to me that there's not a lot of bang for the buck there. I think for just get the brass.
Yeah, but if we're going to, then you're really, if not, then all we're talking about is what? EPSC, and we're not even worried about stormwater permitting. We're not even gonna touch that. All you're doing is worried about soil erosion
True.
during construction.
I think that's true.
And I think we need to go further.
Okay.
I think we need to go to long-term stormwater management, because you build the house, you build the giant garage, and you contain your sediment for 3 months that you build the garage, and then it's done, and all that runoff is going straight in your neighbor's basement. We gotta have a stormwater management
Yeah,
component.
there's no doubt that the E&S component of all this is the easiest of the two.
Yes.
So there's no doubt. I mean, because that's tangible, you know, and it's something that's not, well, it is permanent, yet it's not. It's sort of temporary.
It's short term.
So,
Right, so, and we can't expect you to go around and enforce stormwater permits, but if it's in the land files,
Land records, yeah.
land records, then if
There's
nothing
complaint.
else, it'll get caught at the next home sale.
I mean, you could have a SMO. I mean, that's a stormwater management officer. I mean, the larger towns have SMOs.
Oh, yeah, we're not
So,
ready to go there.
We can't even get a recreation director. So,
So, yeah, you can get an
It
SMO
would be-
/ rec director,
that would be,
Have
that
a
would be the
system, a
compliance.
municipal system of
right?
stormwater management.
And yeah, and if we ever get in a stormwater management system in the village,
That, to me, that's.
then we
that's
can, you know, the stormwater management, we still have the EPSC, but the stormwater management requirements for individual properties, those riders can be done away with, or if they're managed properly, you know what I mean?
That is your cure. I mean, to me, that's your
Right.
cure. Now, is it gonna be able to handle the storms that we've had in the past recently? No. And
Yeah,
what kind
that's
of
right.
damage is it going to do? And
Right.
I don't know, but I mean, for, you know, stormwater management in this town, quite frankly, sucks.
Oh.
I mean,
Oh, it's horrible.
it's.
Well-
Right to the river.
We need the system, we need the
Yeah.
map that the
We
highway
do.
department
Oh,
has, the drawing, right, there's a
And the
drawing of
soils
the
that-
stormwater system.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got that.
Soils that.
System.
Oh, yeah.
And drawing,
It's like on the back of a napkin with a couple of lines
Down the river, that's it.
showing
Yeah.
swales.
Well, there's a whole bunch of different drop inlets and culverts that need to be, you know, taken care of. And I believe that's on that map, and it's not a map. It's a hand-drawn thing where they are with the, and it works for them, it works for Pete. But that is one thing I actually want to approach CCRCP next year, is to get a stormwater infrastructure map in the town. For the whole town.
Well, and
Oh, yeah.
not to complicate things, but to throw it in at the end here, because why not? Right, we're talking about simplification and all these things, like, and talking about this risk matrix, which I think you're all aware, I'm definitely in support of that. As the sort of the concept of the regs are right now, but another way to simplify things potentially is sort of this concept from quite a while back that I brought up of like town-wide, where are the high risk areas, right? The village, where things are tight, neighbors are close, there's not a lot of pervious surface. So like simplifying this, where you had said zoning districts, right? Like that's a little weird, because like those aren't necessarily directly rated to the risks inherently of stormwater in the area. However, that's another way to simplify this. Like instead of going through umpteen things or analysis, do we just simplify it? I think this will get more pushback from the public, because then like if the village like residents perceive that like everyone in the village just has to automatically get a engineered plan, because that's what we said, right? Like if that's like, okay, here's the risk, the village, you need an engineered plan. Does anywhere on your lot have slopes over X? You need an engineered plan. Is anywhere, are you developing XYZ close to your neighbor? Instantly an engineered plan. So there's ways to do it sort of location based as well.
Right, simplified, but
And I-
maybe still you could have a lower threshold, I suppose, a small base threshold.
I think that's a harder sell though, because then like if somebody's in the village and they say, well, what if I'm only putting in a walkway to
Mhm.
my house, right? Like, so there's definitely, that would be
Right,
a harder sell
If you
to
look
the
at-
public, I would think.
to have exceptions, you mean, to the whole premise of having the
No,
whole
to like
village?
blanket say, yeah, to like blanket say anyone in village residential neighborhood north or south or whatever, everyone there needs an engineered plan for anything you do.
For anything, rather than,
Any creation of new impervious surface, like,
so you think it's a
or
harder
maybe
still
it's a
to have a
small
low
threshold of 100.
threshold? Yeah, mhm,
I'm not saying,
right,
a sandbox, but like maybe that's just, there's lots of different ways to go about this is all I'm saying, like, and there's positives and negatives to, I think, any of them.
mhm.
But I do want to go back to that, the enemy of good is perfection. And, we could just be spinning our wheels all along. I think everybody in this room understands that we do need to address stormwater in this town. There's no offense about it. To me, water quality is kind of a passion of mine, and that starts with erosion and sedimentation. And then goes on to obviously those practices that we're trying to figure out how are we gonna fit this, and most importantly, how is the discourse gonna go with the general public? I could run a bunch of scenarios right now on that, and it all comes back to that future land use map that we had at the town plan. That type of stuff. You're gonna be messing with my town, you're messing with my property, take my property rights away, you're doing some it's
Well, it turned out that didn't matter anyway, because the state abolished the things that would have restricted them in rural conservation.
Mhm.
They got rid of tier 3.
Mhm. Yeah, well, we didn't have any tier 3 anyway, much. We had a tiny bit of tier 3. It was not on our map. It didn't matter. So anyway, yeah,
So
I'm looking at the matrix and we're on
Yeah,
what I'm
well-
probably gonna do is, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take our current zoning permit, look at the matrix, try to winnow it down and make it simple for what I think it is. And that's the note I'm putting down right now.
I mean, the matrix could be lifted out and put in. See, I think using the existing zoning as the framework
Mhm.
for this, the zoning permit, the section 5 is about permits. Okay. So let's see what we can put into the permitting section. We can take the matrix and we can say, if you're below this threshold, certain threshold, then you don't need to do anything. If you're above this threshold, then you have to follow the handbook, let's say, for erosion and sedimentation. That can just be in there, basically. Those are the basic standards that are mentioned here. And then if you don't need a site plan review, which almost everything does except for single family homes, duplexes. If you
Sheds.
don't need that, then here's the matrix that will determine whether you need a plan or a professionally engineered plan. Everybody basically who needs a site plan,
stormwater plan?
a professionally designed plan that includes erosion and stormwater.
Okay, but you may not
One or
necessarily, you may not qualify for one, but
Yeah, well,
qualify for the other.
Put that if you want to make it more complex, you could say that in your matrix. Here's a matrix. If you don't need site plan review, because in site plan review, you're gonna have a site plan that is engineered and they will they need to put on erosion and stormwater on the site plan for review by the DRB. If you don't need that, then you can take the matrix test and you will be required for one or both to be engineered.
I love it.
And if you aren't required for one or both to be engineered, you can either say, well, first flush, low risk, or whatever you want to say, if you want to try to capture all the small projects. Because that was the sort of the point, was to capture the small projects. And what Christy Witters recommended was, you know, the state has rather big triggers, so let's see if we can capture the small triggers. And
Right.
put the matrix, take the matrix out of 617, leave 617 as the
Guidance.
guidance, the guidelines that hopefully at least the zoning administrator, new and untried or whatever, whenever, will read and say, if you're below the threshold, we recommend that you do these things, but maybe we don't require them. If you are required to have an engineered plan, then you have to do some of them and they have to be maintained.
And maybe
Input
if
to-
there's a small space in between for a self-engineered
Yeah,
stormwater containment, like okay. It's a small garage and there's gonna be minimal runoff, but there is runoff. You're in a small lot. Capture it. You can self-engineer it to demonstrate that you're gonna recover how much volume, like literally big tubs that collect it and then bleed it off slowly. Catching the
Something.
first flush. So that step 4 will have 3 parts. No stormwater management, self-engineered stormwater management,
Flesh it out.
professionally engineered stormwater management.
I'm not gonna flesh it out. I mean, because as you know, as you start going down that process, you're gonna see, okay, that's not working, this is working, that'll.
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
You know, so that's huge. Is to spend the time to really go through the nuts and bolts of it.
I gotta
Three
do
minutes
this on my
behind.
work computer because I can't freaking edit Word and drive me nuts. But yeah, I will try to add some stuff to that and flush out those stages, and then we can build on Trevor's matrices and requirements and have a staggered point schedule where
yeah, and look
Cer-
at the matrix from the previous version and this more simple matrix, and see if you like one or the other. Chelsea likes the more complicated one, he likes the simpler one, because based on the feedback,
it too, but
based on the
I get it, I
feedback
get
of
it.
not having it, you know,
no.
not having someone have to go through.
It has to be simple
13
math.
steps.
All you gotta do is if you can
Well, some people
subtract
don't
and
even,
add and divide,
people don't want to do
you can
that.
calculate.
But what are the issues that we wanna make sure we capture? We can't get bogged down in the minutia.
Well, we have to have the minutia. The minutia has to be in there,
I
the
hate-
numbers.
I don't like minutia.
Some people don't like math.
He said that tonight.
Yeah,
Just
Chelsea, you were gonna say something.
That was a
I
nice
just
thought.
want to speak to the concept of like in the zoning versus like this new section and having these matrices. I think my only, not only, but the thought I'm having now is like of why I sort of lean into either like the whatever we were calling current, or even the first draft of what you were working on, where it's like sort of stands outside of like these sections and zoning of 5 and wherever, and is because I just perceive the zoning regs to need a fair amount of work. And so in my mind, building on what's already there that I feel is in some ways broken and in some ways inadequate, or whatever the case may be, it's like, it feels like a step backwards. Like instead of building on what's already there, that like we're like, oh, we need to fix this, start with something like fresh and new and clean and shiny, and then like once this is behind us, let's work on something else in the zoning regs.
Oh,
Because when you were just bringing up like the site plan review concept, and folks are gonna like need a engineered plan for the site plan review, out of curiosity, because I don't know a whole lot about site plan review, to be quite honest. Surprised. It's one of the things that I haven't sort of read upside down and backwards in our regs.
It's obscure too.
it's weird. I feel like
Yeah,
this needs
it
to be
is
like
weird.
totally rewritten. This is
But-
trash.
We
I'm
tried in
Fine.
2012 to have a new
I'm
regulation.
not trying to be
We'll
offensive to
never
anyone.
do it.
Whether those
We'll
people who
never
wrote it or-
do it.
No,
I'm telling you.
it's just like, it literally is written that like expansion of permitted uses require this except for an XYZ. And then 4 dwelling units is like in there, which is then confusing because like in my district, 4 dwelling unit is a conditional use, and it's the whole thing is just
You've opened the door and are looking at Keith's hell that he
Well,
lives in.
Legislation, state legislation anyway, by the way, 3 and 4 units, they can't require different requirements from single family homes and duplexes, but I can,
In water and sewer.
for everywhere. Yeah, only water and sewer, but like I'm
Sewer
HDR.
districts.
Remember, I'm HDR, but not HDR.
yeah, right.
I'm like
Well,
HDR.
HDR obviously needs to be worked on, but
But
the problem with having it in a freestanding section that works all by itself is people aren't going to look there. The DRB is not going to go and look for the requirements about stormwater in section 6.167. You're going to want it in the permitting section where people who administer this, the DRB, are going to be looking for what the requirements are. They're just not going to go to that section. I just do not believe. And I mean, I'd love to start the whole thing fresh and new and shiny. But I can tell you it's never going to happen. We just.
Not if we
won't.
make any changes in it.
Aren't gonna get there.
certainly like I mean, section 5 with the applications can reference 6.17. And I mean, the whole regs is different sections. To say that like one section rules them all and like, oh, if it's not in this section, nobody's gonna look at it. Well, then nobody's looking at anything. Are they looking at 5.9 for wetlands or
Well,
looking at
let's make it
6.11
easy
for
for the
driveways? Or
DRB
they?
to do the right thing, which is to put it in, put it in the permitting section. This is what we need for you to.
But then
do the
everything should be in the
permitting.
permitting section. We should pull wetlands into the permitting section. We should pull like
It's referenced.
Flood hazard overlay.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's just I don't that sort of boggles my brain. And I don't.
Yep.
I'm with you, Chelsea. I agree.
I'm with you too.
I'm leaning towards
And quite
keeping
frankly,
a separate
if
section and making.
people who are volunteering for a quasi judicial board in this town cannot read the zoning regs for the projects they are reviewing, they should step down from that board.
They don't.
So
So we-
unpopular opinion.
we deal with what we've got. You know what I mean?
I mean, but do we have to?
Well,
Right?
I can tell you,
Like, do we have to
We
just keep
take-
taking the, the not great answer?
go to the select board
Somebody has to make a
with
change.
something that the DRB and the planning and zoning department are not on board with, it is not gonna fly. So that's the reality of the situation, but
That's true.
Well, based on the DRB's feedback recently, with all these requests for waivers, they specifically said they want
Specificity.
specificity, concise, no ifs, ands, or buts. X, Y, Z are the
they
requirements.
want specificity. They don't want it to be so complicated that they can't deal with it. And more complicated than all the rest of the regulations put together.
There's a.
I feel like you can have one without some of the other.
Board right now, though.
What?
There's a change going on in that board. It's gonna take a while. And it's down a person.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully we can come to some kind of
Mhm.
compromise. Maybe it's referenced in
Well, I
both
know I've
sections.
compromised my work for the town of Richmond at this point. I've been working since 7:15 this morning.
It's time to adjourn the
What do
meeting.
you call it?
I love my job.
Yep,
All right, I'll make a motion to retire for the evening.
all right. Chelsea is seconding it. I can
Second
tell.
that.
Yep, Allison is agreeing to adjourn, so we're all good.
Unanimous.
We will stand adjourned, and we have 3 weeks until the next meeting.
What? 2 weeks?